Chapter 644, Sea of Fire. The armed helicopter cut through the night sky, its hard outer shell frozen with a layer of frost in the cold night air, but this did not affect its rapid flight. It was just that in this environment, its endurance was also greatly challenged, and it could probably only be used for short flights. After 10 minutes, Zhang Yi and the others flew all the way from Blizzard City to Jiangning City. Just as they arrived over Jiangning City, they faintly saw a warm yellow glow being lit on the ground through the frost on the window. Huh? What is that? A bonfire? Zhang Yi poked his head out. At the same time, an indistinct rumble came from the ear. Everyone heard this thunder-like noise and couldn't help but lean closer to the window to watch. When they looked closely, they couldn't help but be shocked. A sea of flames. The area in the center of Jiangning City, Jing Square, had been reduced to a huge sea of flames. From time to time, there were also loud explosions coming from the ground, the sound reaching high into the sky, as loud as thunder. What's going on? Zhang Yi frowned, a little surprised. At that moment, Zhu Zheng's voice sounded through the communication equipment. Have you all seen the explosions in Jiangning City? Don't be surprised, this is the first step of our plan. First, we will use the Blue Dragon 5 bombers to bomb the entire Jiangning Plaza. After this round of bombing, there will be no hiding place in Jiangning Plaza. Even if we can't eliminate a few of Eclipse Moon's Ronin, we can at least force them out. Zhang Yi immediately thought of the bombers he saw inside the airport and understood. Eclipse Moon has special equipment that can block satellite monitoring signals within 5 kilometers. But Blizzard City also has the means to directly blow up the entire Jiangning Plaza. All troubles stem from insufficient firepower. Blizzard City will not lack ammunition. If it weren't for the difficulty of transportation, Zhu Xing would probably have directly ordered hundreds of cannons to be brought in and leveled the entire Jiangning Plaza. Yu Xingyang watched the exploding flames below and excitedly clenched his fists. Now, our movement will be much more convenient. With any luck, we'll blow them all to Kingdom Come. But Zhuo Feiyu, standing nearby, calmly reminded him, in this kind of situation, it's best not to harbor any illusions of grandeur. If those guys were that easy to kill, they wouldn't have needed us to prepare for so long before coming over. Yu Xingyang took a deep breath. I know. You don't need to remind me of that. Peng Li and Zhang Yi were close together, so they leaned over the same window to look. Seeing the vast sea of flames below, she couldn't help but ask, with this kind of large-scale fire, unless the other side is very familiar with the terrain and finds underground shelters, it would be difficult to survive, wouldn't it? Zhang Yi didn't directly answer this question. He asked in return, have you heard of napalm? Huh? Peng Li blinked her big eyes, as she had never heard of such a thing. Zhang Yi pointed at the inferno below. To put it simply, it's a napalm bomb. It doesn't have the destructive power of a bomb, but it can cause widespread burning. Even the headquarters can't really use bombs to bomb the entire area within a radius of 5 kilometers. Therefore, napalm bombs are still heavily used. This is to deplete oxygen and destroy resources such as food in Jiangning Square, forcing the Eclipse Moon Group to come out and fight us. Zhang Yi laughed. I don't believe those guys will let themselves be burned to death so easily. Especially not in this weather. Peng Li blinked doubtfully, then turned her gaze to Chen Xiaoxiao. Chen Xiaoxiao nodded, he's right. But next, it will be much easier for us to find the enemy. At least we won't be ambushed in advance and caught in the trouble of an urban battle. As they spoke, the helicopter gunship had already stopped 10 kilometers away from Jiangning Square. Since the abilities of the enemy aliens are unknown, naturally they have to maintain a certain distance before landing. Avoid landing in a box. After the fire burned out, a drone swept over Jiangning Square. A spherical device with a red glow emanating from it protruded from the bottom of the drone. Immediately afterwards, an invisible wave of electricity swept across the entire Jiangning Square. On the side of the Combat Command Center, a staff member reported to Zhu Xing and Tu Yunlai, the communication blockade of Jiangning Square area has been completed. They cannot use communication equipment to contact each other, let alone seek help from the outside world. Xu Jing nodded, very good. Let them become headless flies first, and then crush them one by one. By first depriving the opponent of the means of communication, while the communication devices in the Jiangnan region are not affected, we can seize the initiative in this battle from the very beginning. After the helicopter landed, the orders from headquarters sounded in the headsets of several team leaders. Zhang Yi's team, enter the square from the southeast. Wu Shifang's team, enter the square from the west. Xue Feiyu's team, enter the square from the north. Remember, your mission is to attract firepower and delay the Eclipse Moon people. If an encounter occurs, the priority is to protect your own safety, not to take the initiative. Zhang Yi said calmly, Roger that. He took out 2 silvery white pistols from another dimension. These were the White Eagles that Liu Karen had built for him, and they could hold 20 rounds of holy silver bullets. Zhang Yi walked over and opened the door to the cabin, then turned to Liang Yu and the others and said, Let's go. Liang Yu followed Zhang Yi without thinking. Peng Li and Chen Xiaoxiao glanced at each other. They were very nervous, but that nervousness was also tinged with excitement. Danger and gain go hand in hand. As long as they can successfully complete this mission, the rewards will be huge. The two nodded, cheering each other on, and then followed Zhang Yi, carrying their tactical backpacks. Zhang Yi's tactical helmet had the location and path to the square marked for him by headquarters. So he didn't have to worry about getting lost here at all. At the same time, he could also see the routes of the other 2 teams clearly. The 3 teams were proceeding in a triangular formation. There was a reason for this. By triangulation, they could determine the location of the other team. After all, within a 5-kilometer radius, satellite detection had been blocked by the other team using technical means. So the location of the other team's leader could only be found by manual calculation. Capture the Kingpin first. Killing or capturing Phoenix Courtyardren was the top priority of this mission. 3 teams set off one after the other, and not far away, another armed helicopter slowly landed. On it were the members of the Heavenly Soldier team. Seeing the 3 outer city teams heading towards Jing Square, Deng Shentong's eyes were full of amusement. They are unlikely to return from this trip. However, if they can hold out until our support arrives, it will prove that they are indeed capable. At that time, they can at least be absorbed and join the Yanyun army in Blizzard City. It is not impossible for outstanding performers to even enter the investigation team. The latter that Deng Shentong was referring to naturally referred to Zhang Yili. Since they met in Blizzard City, Deng Shentong has been very impressed with Zhang Yili and has always wanted to recruit him into the Heavenly Squad. Let me see what you can do this time, Deng Shentong said with a smile. Then they began to calmly wait for the headquarters to send them an order to attack. Chapter 645, Soul Beast. Since Zhang Yi and the others got off the gunship, there have been no more orders from headquarters. Zhang Yi understands that the next order will probably not come until the members of the Eclipse Moon team show up. The fire in front of them has gradually died down. After all, the power of napalm cannot last long. And the sub-zero temperatures at midnight, -60 to 70 degrees Celsius, were enough to make the flames quickly disappear. However, at this time, no one knew the location of the members of the Eclipse Moon group. I hope I don't get unlucky and run into their main members. If that happens, I'll have no choice but to retreat for a while, Zhang Yi muttered. He could not possibly fight the entire Eclipse Moon group on his own. After Zhang Yi and the others arrived at the designated location, they had to make their own decisions about their actions. Zhang Yi did not rush forward, but stood cautiously in place, observing the scene before him. Jing Square had been burned to a desolate ruin, with gray-black smoke billowing into the sky. Zhang Yi asked Hua Hua on his shoulder, Hua Hua, can you smell the breath of living things? Hua Hua's sharp gaze swept over the ruins in front of it. It sniffed, and finally shook its head helplessly. Zhang Yi sighed, is it because of the fire? Meow. After the fire burned, the smell became complicated, and it was difficult to distinguish the scent of living people from it. Chen Xiaoxiao and Peng Li walked over. Captain, what should we do next? Zhang Yi pondered for a moment before making his choice. Just wait here for them to come. Chen Xiao. Ping Li. Chen Xiao couldn't help but say, is there a possibility that we are here to surround and attack them, rather than them surrounding and attacking us? Ping Li said, yeah, is it appropriate to wait here? Zhang Yi ignored them and began to carefully examine the surroundings. He was good at long-range attacks, not melee combat. Once he was ambushed by a melee master like Daiku Kaiketsu or Tsukamoto Nobunaga, it could be dangerous for him, probably a 0.01% chance of danger, which had to be guarded against. So he had to figure out the environment here, then choose a safe location and wait for the prey to snipe. With Thunder Strike and Origin Bomb, his range could completely cover the entire 5-kilometer range of Jing Square. Zhang Yi casually answered them while checking the surroundings. Don't forget, their intelligence-gathering capabilities are particularly strong. Presumably, they already know our location and have deployed troops to deal with us. I'm not familiar with this area, and they have the advantage. Therefore, I plan to use passive defense. Zhang Yi's gaze scanned the surroundings for a long time, and then he determined the location of his ambush, a burnt black commercial building. Zhang Yi turned around and gave orders to the others. I will ambush from the roof, and your job is to protect my safety nearby. After Zhang Yi finished speaking, he didn't wait for Chen Xiao and Peng Li to respond, and directly opened the dimensional portal. Liang Yu, you are in charge of protecting me personally. Liang Yu nodded, and there was no need for words on this matter. The two of them and Hua entered the dimensional portal, and the next moment they appeared on top of the building. Chen Xiao and Peng Li were left alone, staring at each other in disbelief on the snowy ground below. Why did he leave us here? Peng Li looked incredulous. What kind of captain is he? He's so irresponsible. She stamped her feet in anger. Chen Xiao's eyebrows were raised, as she cautiously surveyed her surroundings while saying, he knows very well that we are only temporarily working together, so from the beginning he never intended to care about our thoughts. However, now that everyone is in a dangerous battlefield, his approach is indeed a bit childish. Peng Li sighed, so what should we do? Chen Xiao said, let's do what he says first. Rushing to leave the group will only increase our danger. There was nothing the two of them could do, so they could only choose to ambush around the building, waiting for Eclipse Moon's people to come find them. In fact, their conversation could be heard clearly by the combat command center. Zhu Jing crossed his arms and sighed, this Zhang Yi is really too cunning. However, he is very clever, and this is indeed a good way to test the opponent's abilities. They all knew that Eclipse Moon had powerful intelligence acquisition capabilities. But no one knew exactly what those abilities were. Zhang Yi chose to hide on the outskirts of Jing Square and did not take the initiative to attack. If the opponent could still clearly find their location, then it could basically be concluded that the opponent's abilities were similar to the terrifying ability of. So, what are the other two teams doing? Zhu Zheng's gaze fell on the other two outer city teams. Wu Shifang and Zhuofei's people were also advancing with extreme vigilance. Everyone knew that this operation was fraught with danger and no one dared to be careless. The four of them had also arrived at the designated location. There was no need for excessive verbal arrangements between the several people. Compared to Zhang Yi's team, the other teams had already formulated their combat plans long ago. After all, not everyone was as confident in their own strength as Zhang Yi. They needed to plan their team combat well to ensure that nothing would go wrong. And after entering the Jing Square area, the first thing to do was reconnaissance. Mo Zhongning from Wu Shifang's team stepped forward. His eyes fixedly stared at the large area of ruins in front of him, and then he slowly crouched down. He was wrapped in heavy battle armor, and even his hands were covered by the wide sleeves. But when he placed his right hand on the snow, everyone nearby clearly saw the restless movement of his sleeve. A purple light condensed in the palm of his hand. Then a gray rodent burrowed out of his palm. Mo Zhongning, a user of tethered abilities, with the ability code. He can conjure different animals with his superpower, and these animals, like his clones, can share his 5 senses. Wu Shifan looked at him and murmured, using superpowered animals for reconnaissance is really convenient. But since he is the leader of a faction, his ability must be more than just reconnaissance. He must also have strong combat power. And just as everyone else looked curiously at Zhuofeiyu, the little soul beasts in the palm of his hand actually crawled out like a gray stream, endlessly. In just 10 seconds, hundreds appeared. They stood on the snow, looking back at Mo Zhongning, their eyes flashing with a human-like light. "Go, find them," Mo Zhongning said in a low voice. The soul beasts squeaked and then dashed into the burned-out square. Soon, they disappeared among the ruins. On the Zhuofeiyu team, they did not have similar reconnaissance methods, but they had an experienced veteran who was proficient in reconnaissance. Yu Zhengyang had been a reconnaissance soldier for 7 years, so he was in the front, leading the way, carefully searching for traces of the Eclipse Moon Group.